There are a couple things to remember. One, Google changes its algorithm constantly. So what used to be called SEO, which is where people would say, hey, I'm going to take your killer website and change a bunch of stuff on it, and it comes up number one. And then Google changes its algorithm, and your website drops to the bottom. We have a WordPress site. When Google changes their algorithm, they change WordPress. They update it. And the short answer to your question, if you have one post you wrote that you're all proud of that comes up number one, in about a month it won't, because it has to do with number of visits to the site, it has to do with number of clicks and all that. So what we teach is there is no right time. You don't have to blog every day or every week. I blog every couple weeks. One of my favorite bloggers is Tim Ferriss, who wrote the 4-Hour Workweek. He blogs once a month, if that. He's not, I look at his blog, I'll see like one person's posted 50, Tim's posted like 4. Because he's just not in a hurry. But here's the fun part. His blogs fly to the top, and they stay there. They go, people on Dig and all these social networking sites like them, and his theory is less is more. By posting less, by the time his last post starts to drop down, the next one comes up. And I'm sure people here have written articles and stuff like that, or maybe written cool emails. A lot of those are the beginning of blog posts. Blog posts don't have to be they don't have to be long, they don't have to be totally detailed. Often if you're just answering a question and you've used search engine optimization tools and using something like WordPress, it'll come up. The more niche you are, the easier it is to be successful. I'll give you an example. You're a CPA. There was this gentleman who's a tax guy, and he was trying to turn himself into something more successful than just a tax guy. So he came up with this blog post. He wrote this article called The 7 Funniest Write-Offs on the Schedule C. So it's just about a Schedule C, but it was talking about these ridiculous write-offs. It got him on CNN 3 times. It went to the top of the things, and of course an intern was looking for someone to interview about tax season was coming around, saw this blog post and like, get me this dude. And he ended up on CNN, turned it into a book, and now has a speaking career. And it started with this idea of a blog post that people, of course, the next thing was, what else are you going to do next? And it just has to do, and the strategy we teach is blogging is not the answer to your questions, the answer to all your business problems, neither is social networking, but a clear strategy where you're talking to your niche and you're using, we talk about the blogging voice. You guys ever heard that term before? So think of it this way. If you're going to start blogging and you're thinking about after this class, you're going to go and do it. The simplest way to do it is to think of 3 people who are your perfect customer. Your perfect customer, the person you would like to talk to. And you write their name down. And you imagine yourself writing an email to this person or talking to this person. If it's someone who's not very techie, I have to be careful because I tend to get in like a nerd herd kind of frenzy and start hacking out a bunch of stuff that I would understand, my friends would understand, but my clients would be like, what are you doing? Does that make sense? So I got to think of writing it to the person who would understand it, and all of a sudden it makes more sense. How are we doing on time? 5 minutes, Turkish. 5 minutes. Okay, so here's the question I will pose to you guys. If anyone here has looked at this and said, I'm curious, I'd like to learn more about it, I have some questions. What I'm really after is I want to really find out people who don't have much experience with WordPress. They haven't used it much, they're thinking about using it, or they've started using it. I want to know what your questions are. I want to know what keeps you up at night. I want to know what makes you struggle, what you would like to learn about. And we're putting together a podcast radio show where we're going to have people send us questions, and we will answer the questions on the air. And we will call you and have you, if you wish, to be interviewed on the air to talk about, 1, you get to promote your business, and 2, you get to learn more about technology, and 3, your question has more than likely been asked by someone else. And you'll be helping someone else to figure out what that is. So if that even sounds slightly interesting to you, Christine is standing right here. She would be happy to get your business card, your name, your email, your phone number, all the above, whatever that may be. Has anyone here heard this and thought maybe WordPress is right for them? So what would your first step be to start using this tool?
Well, I just need to look for it. Same with Rodrigues' website. So I've looked at his a lot. And what he does is usually, like you said earlier, he quotes someone else. Then he says, this is what I think. What do you think? And then people sit there and write thousands and thousands of posts based upon that. And to me, that seems pretty straightforward and simple. I initially thought, well, I have to write it all myself.
Yeah, it's funny that we get that a lot, that it's super, super, super complicated. And Tim Ferriss, I met him last week at the BizTech Day, and then he talked for a bit. And he had a really good point when he was up there talking. People said, what is your strategy for being so successful at blogging? And what he said resonates with me as a comedian. Because I know when I walk into a room, 30% of the people aren't going to like me. They aren't going to think I'm funny, they had a bad day, whatever. And if I get tied up with them, I'm going to drag everyone else down, right? So I don't need to worry about that. I need to worry about the people who do. And in doing that, I'm probably going to offend a few people. But here's the funny part. The people who get offended will talk more about you than the people who weren't. So, and when people talk about you, it increases your inbound links, gets you higher up on searches. So Tim Ferriss takes a lot of people. If you're a traditional marketer and you've taken all of the classics on printing pages and any kind of print advertising, you probably hate what Tim Ferriss has to say about your field. Because he tears it apart. And the best part is people will come from highfalutin sites and tell him how full of it he is. That's exactly what he wrote the post for. And you'll see 120 posts down there going, you're full of this, you wouldn't do this, you wouldn't, and he's like, great, then someone else will go to defend Tim. Why? You don't know what you're talking about. Guess what? We've started a conversation. That's the whole point of this. It's really that simple. So if you're thinking I'm going to stir something up, good. Good. Maybe not saying things that you wouldn't say to someone to their face would be a good idea not to do on blogging, because I can tell you a great story about how to keep your social networking strategy in line. Yes, it's 7:20. It's closing at 8 o'clock. There you go. 7:30, in case you needed to know that. So I'm thinking that might be my cue.
Go on YouTube.
Yes, attention please. There's a blue light special. Carrots are on sale in aisle 4. Please take your purchases to the front of the store. All right. I think I've beat that into the ground. One last story I wanted to share with you. One of my clients got onto the social networking thing, and we were talking about it, and she was starting to get some effect, and she was playing with Yelp and all this, and she had a longtime client who she'd been working with, and they irritated her. So she wrote this Yelp post and said, you wouldn't believe what these people do, right? Because she has a little name on Yelp, but hadn't really thought about the fact that maybe that profile will lead back to her in some way. It resulted in her getting a phone call saying, take your stuff out of our store, your contract is canceled, go home, it was nice knowing you. Before that, she had called Yelp and tried to get her profile removed and all this stuff, and then she says, how is this going to work? I was like, well, Google does what's called indexing, which means that post is going to be there for about 3 months. And if it goes to the Internet Archive, it was there for more than a week, it's going to be there forever. And if anyone else links to that post, you can't get them to erase it. And she's like, I'm going to send a big I'm sorry letter. I was like, I think you might just want to pack your stuff up. I don't think, so if someone was standing in front of you and you wouldn't say it, don't write it. Because that's the thing that Tim said that I think was the best thing from his speech, was once you write it and release it, it's out there forever. And so we say is the secret to being successful in blogging, give love, get love. Always saying nice things about people. You can always look at a blog post and say, you rock, here's what I liked about what you said, you're cool. If you do that all the time, you will never suffer. Well, you might suffer, but you won't suffer from blogging. So I'm going to call that after the blue light special and say that's enough.